We begin today on Daf Samech Beis, the new Perek, the last Perek of Masechta Avoda Zara, Haseicher Es HaPayil. This Perek will continue discussing halachas related to Yayin Nesach, the Isser Hana that there is for Yayin Nesach. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, Haseicher Es HaPayil, a person hires a worker, Lasais Imoi B'Yayin Nesach, to do work with him with Yayin Nesach. Which means the guy has Yayin Nesach, and as Rashi says, we're talking here literally about Yayin Nesach, wine that you know for a fact was used by Avoda Zara to pour for Avoda Zara, and the Yid is being hired to transport this wine or whatever work there is to be done with this wine. Scharai Aser, the wages of this work is forbidden to have any anah from it. However, if the guy hired the Yid to do work, other work, not work necessarily with the Yayin Nesach, then even if when he's doing this work, the guy tells him, bring me this barrel of wine, Yayin Nesach, from one place to another, the wages will be allowed to have anah from, because he wasn't hired really for just work, designated work for the Yayin Nesach, therefore it'll be mutter. The Gemara will explain more in detail what exactly this case is, that it will be mutter. A person that rents out his donkey, for what purpose? In order for this donkey to transport, specifically Yayin Nesach. So schara, whatever he makes, the way, not wages, but the payment for the rent of this donkey that's specifically for this purpose will be aser, because the money earned is again money that's earned from Yayin Nesach, work for Yayin Nesach. However, if he rents a donkey that someone wants to just ride on it, so even if this guy that's renting it and he's riding in it, he also places his barrel of wine, Yayin Nesach, on it, schara mutter. But over here, the money of this rental will be mutter to have anah from, because he rented it in order to ride on it, not specifically designated for the Yayin Nesach. Okay, so the Gemara here now is going to explain what's the source of this concept. Why would the wages earned from work done for Yayin Nesach be aser? Where do we see that the Isser Anah that's in the Yayin Nesach itself carries over also to wages for work that you do with Yayin Nesach? Fragt the Gemara, my time schara yaser. What's the reason for this? That the wages earned from work done with Yayin Nesach would be yaser. If you're going to say the reason is hayil v'Yayin Nesach aser bana, that since the Yayin Nesach itself is forbidden to have any anah from it, so therefore scharai nami yaser. So the wages are also going to be yaser. So some Rishonim say that the Gemara is suggesting to say that the wages should be aser min atayra. Or Taisva says, other Rishonim say that the Gemara is suggesting that maybe there's a gzeira midrabanan, that the wages should be aser. But the Gemara says, we don't find such a thing. Harei, Arla, when it comes to Arla, which is the first 3 years, what grows from the tree, which is also aser ba'ana. Or klaya kerem, or if you have a vineyard that's planted with klayin, with grain or whatever else, and this is also the asurim ba'ana, they're aser ba'ana. But what does it say regarding this? Tanan, the Mishnah says, Machran, if you sell the Arla or the Klaya Keren, the Kiddush Bidmeyen, and then the money you got in exchange, you will Mekadesh a Isha with this money, Mekadeshes. The Kiddushin takes effect. That means that this is money that's yours, you could have anah from. So even though it's money that you got from selling something which is Asa B'Hanah, it still could be used. So seemingly, the same should apply regarding Avoda Zara, that any money you get in exchange for Avoda Zara, and definitely money that you earned, the wages that you earned from work with Avoda Zara should be mutter. So Ella, the Gemara says, well, Avoda Zara is actually different than Arla and Klaya Keren. There's an added chumrah that we find by Avoda Zara. And what is this chumrah? Hayel v'teifis says damav ke avodas kechaveh. Maybe we'll say the pshat is that the Yayin Nesach, which is a takreves Avoda Zara, something that you sacrifice for Avoda Zara, maybe the halacha regarding the Yayin Nesach is like the Avoda Zara itself, that by Avoda Zara, the money that you get by selling anything of Avoda Zara, the Isser Anah of the Avoda Zara goes on to that money itself. Rashi here brings what we learned earlier in the Masechta. It says, V'hayisa cherem kamayu, that whatever you get, V'hayisa, whatever you mahaya, whatever you get from the Avoda Zara, by selling it, the money takes on the same Isser Hano like the Avoda Zara itself. So maybe here it's the same halacha regarding the Yayin Nesach, that it becomes also like the Avoda Zara itself. But the thing is, though, it's not the exact same thing. We're not talking about a person that's selling Yayin Nesach. We're talking about a person that's doing work for someone. He's hired to do work with Yayin Nesach, and now we want to say that the wages that he's getting paid is going to be Aser. It's not exactly the same like selling Yayin Nesach, that the money that you get in return is Aser. So therefore the Gemara asks him this, but V'harei Shviyis, there's another example where we see a similar Chumre like Avoda Zara, and that is the produce of Shemitah, the Tefeses as Domel. If you sell anything from Shemitah, whatever halacha there is regarding the produce of the Shemitah itself, now the money that you earned from the Shemitah that you sold will take effect on that money. Right, so for example, Rashi brings what's one of the basic halachas that there is regarding the produce of Shemitah, that the produce of Shemitah that you keep in your house, there's a time that's called Zman Abir. There's a time that you have to liquidate it. You have to get it out of your house. When the behemoths beside that have no more paydas in the field to eat, so then the person in the bayis is not allowed to keep that produce in his house during that time. So it's the same also with the money that you earn from selling Shemitah produce. So you can't keep that money after that Zman Abir. You have to put it out to be hefker. So we see that by Shemitah, when you sell Peidah Shemitah, just like Avoda Zara, the status of Shemitah goes on to the money as well. Now, Tanan, the Mishnah says regarding Shemitah that we don't say the same thing regarding work when someone earns wages from work with produce of Shemitah, because the Mishnah says as follows: So, Eimer L'Poyel, a person says to a worker, "Hey, loch dinner zeh. This is a dinner. Here's money, and l'koitli boy yerek hayom. Collect for me with it." Boy, this is the most important word here in this whole thing. Boy is with this money that I'm giving you, give me in exchange for it a yerek hayom, a vegetable today. Schar yaser. So here the schar of it will be aser, meaning the schar of the of Shemitah will be aser, because what we're talking about over here is this is a sale, because he's basically saying to him that I'm giving you this money, and the value of this money you should collect for me a vegetable today. What does that mean? It's basically a sale. That's why he's using the lashon of boy, that I'm giving you money in exchange for this yerakis. So the person that gets the money, what is he getting the money for? It's a sale. He's getting money for the vegetables that he's giving him. So that's going to be aser, as we just said, the halacha of Shemitah, that the money becomes aser like the produce of Shemitah itself. However, if the person uses a different lashon, the same lashon, but not with the word boy, he tells the worker, "L'koitli yerek hayom, collect for me the vegetables today," and he pays him for the work that he does. So then, schare mutter, the wages that he pays him for the work that he does will be mutter, because he's not telling him, "Here, I'm selling you these yerakis for this money." He doesn't say boy, he says, "Work for me today, and I'll pay you wages for this." So then the wages that he pays him will be mutter, because the halacha of Shemitah does not go onto the wages that one is paid for doing work with Shemitah produce. So if so, the same should be true regarding Avoda Zara. Even if you're going to say that the money earned from selling Avoda Zara also becomes aser, but not the wages that you earn for doing work with Avoda Zara. So Rabbi Avo says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that it's not menat, but it's a knasush, a konsu, chachamim. There's a penalty that chachamim made a special knas in two cases. One is bechamarin, one is by the drivers, by the donkey drivers that transport the Shemitah produce, as the Gemara is soon going to bring here, and also ubiyayin nesach. And regarding a person that does work with yayin nesach, that the wages of both of these works, Chachamim gave a knas that it'll be asat havanah from it. So yayin nesach chodam moran. Yayin nesach is our Mishnah. That's the reason why the pile that works for yayin nesach, it's asat havanah from it. And Chamar and Mahi, where do we find that donkey drivers that are transporting the Shemitah produce is going to be aser as well as a knas from the Chachamim? Because the Tanya, we learned in the Braise, HaChamarin, Shahaya Oisim, Malacha, Bepeir Shvius. The donkey drivers that are doing work, transporting the produce of Shemitah. Schar on Shvius. So the Braise says their pay is Shvius, has a status of Shemitah. Now, what do these two words mean? Scharan shvius. My scharan shvius. What does that mean? That their pay is also shvius. So, if you would translate this to mean the yavinon luhu schar mi pei shvius, that you pay them for the work that they're doing, transporting the pei shvius, they're getting paid from the produce of Shemitah. But that can't be true, because then nimtze, it would come out that that this person is paying the money that he owes for these donkey drivers. He's paying it mi pei shvius. He's paying them with the produce of Shemitah. And the Torah says regarding the peiros of Shemitah, la'achla, that the peiros of Shemitah is meant to be eaten, v'loy l'schayra, and you don't use it for business purposes. So you can't use peiros of Shemitah to pay these donkey drivers for their work. So that can't be the pshat. It's a big discussion in the Rishonim. Taisus over here speaks about it also, exactly what kind of schayra, what kind of business is also to be done with peiros Shemitah. Not necessarily all kind of, you can just, the Taisus here says, to sell peiros Shemitah just a little bit for a neighbor or for somebody, it's mutter. But to do bigger, to sell wholesale, person that buys in bulk and sells a lot, that's what's awesome. But over here, the Gemara is applying that the same is over here regarding these donkey drivers. These donkey drivers are like today's truckers. They come and they transport a lot of the peiros shvius for the purpose of selling and business that's going to be done with it. And you're paying him with the peiros shvius. So this falls into this category of la'achla v'loy l'schayra. You're not allowed to pay them with this peiros shvius. So it's not saying here that they're getting paid with these fruits, with the produce of Shemitah. So ve'ela, the pshat is, like what Rabbi Yechanan said, that there's a knas here. The kadosh scharan b'kedushas shvius, that their wages that they get paid for the work that they're doing, transporting peiros shvius, will also have the status of the kedusha of Shemitah. This is the knas that Chachamim said that their wages becomes kadosh b'kedushas shvius. This is the source where we see that Chachamim gave this knas regarding these chamorim. There's also a big discussion in Rishonim regarding this detail here. It's not 100% clear what it is that they did wrong by transporting these peiros Shemitah. Just transporting, being a donkey driver, transporting peiros shvius, what's wrong with that? So I mentioned before, many Rishonim say that the problem is, what are they transporting here? These are donkey drivers that transport a lot at a time. They're transporting for the purpose of selling them. So they're the ones that are causing the peiros of Shemitah to be used to sell, which it's not supposed to be sold. It's supposed to be left hefker, or even what you have in the house, you have to take out in the Zman Abir, that it should be left out in the field, and they're doing this after that time period. So they're the ones that are causing this Isser to happen, and therefore Chachamim put a knas on the wages that they get, that they should also have the halacha of Kedushas Shvius on it. Okay, but now the Gemara asks in this, Umi Kadosh, how could you say that there's a kedusha here? Menatayre, there is no kedusha for the wages that you earn from work that you do with peiros shvius. Because Tanya, we learned in the Braise, or the other girsa here is Tnan, that this is a Mishnah. This is actually the same Mishnah that was quoted before in the Amud here, even though the order and the Lashon, the way it's brought here is the opposite, but it's the same Mishnah that was quoted before. That a person that says to his worker on Shemitah, hey lach dinner zeh v'lekoitli yerek, Hayom, that here, take this dinner and collect for me a vegetable today. So then schare mutter, the pay will be mutter, because this is just pay for work. It's not a sale. So pay for work, wages, is mutter to have enough from. However, if he says l'koitli yerek boy hayom, if he says here's money, and in exchange for this money, give me vegetables, then schare yasser, then the pay is going to be yasser, because that word boy means it's a sale. You're paying him for the Yerakis instead of this money. So here is where we see in the Mishnah, as the Gemara quoted before, that any wages for work done in Shemitah is mutter. It doesn't. The wages don't have the status of Shemitah on it. So how do we say here that it gets the kedusha of Shemitah? Okay, so the Gemara here brings two pshatim. The second shot the Gemara is going to say is going to go back to the point that the Gemara said before, that it's a knas that the Rabbanan gave. But first the Gemara actually gives another pshat. So Amar Abaye, so therefore Abaye says that really we can go back to the pshat that we said before. La'olam, really I can tell you that the pshat here is Yavinon le schar mi peiros shvius, that this is a donkey driver that's transporting produce of Shemitah, and is being paid with the produce of the Shemitah itself. Basically, how is the donkey driver getting paid? He's taking a percent of the produce that he himself is transporting now as a pay for what he's doing. Now, with the kakashilach, the question was, how could you pay him with part of what he's transporting for the work that he's doing? It says in the Torah, la'achla v'lei l'schayre. You could only use the produce of Shemitah for eating and not for any work. And here, you're paying this worker with the paydas of the Shemitah. The answer is, it depends how you pay him. The yav and nehalei b'tzad heter. You're going to pay this donkey driver transporting this paydas Shemitah in a permissible way. How could you pay him with this in a permissible way? So the Keditnan, there's a Mishnah that says regarding Ma'aseh Sheni. So the Mishnah there says, a person should not tell his friend that's going to Yerushalayim, and he's not going now. So he tells his friend, Halali, Peiris, Halalu Yerushalayim, take for me these fruits or this produce up to Yerushalayim, L'chalik, and then we're going to divide, and I'll give you a percent of this paydas that you're taking to Yerushalayim. As your pay, you're going to get a portion of this in Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because when you say this expression that you're giving him a portion of this produce that he's bringing up to Yerushalayim, it sounds like you're basically telling him that you're paying him his wages with the paydas of the Ma'aseh Sheni. And Ma'aseh Sheni, similar to Shemitah, cannot be used for selling and for business. It has to be used only for eating. It's supposed to be brought to Yerushalayim as kedusha. Ma'aseh Sheni has in it a kedusha.
Being eaten there.
It's again.
He's eating it.
And a chanami. But because you're using it to pay him with this for the work that he did, so you're being mechalel the kedusha that it has. So therefore, you can't tell him that this is what you're going to be paid with. Avol, however, what he could say to his friend is, Halen, bring it up to Yerushalayim, and then we'll eat it and drink from this together in Yerushalayim. And and they give each other a matana. That you give your neighbor a matana from your paydas of Ma'aseh Sheni, and he'll give you when you bring for him. So this is just a gift. If you're just giving it as a gift, but not as a pay of the percent of what he brought up, then it's allowed. Because it's a matana shel chinam. You're just giving him matana, you're using a term of matana, it's not considered to be that you're using the produce of Ma'aseh Sheni for a pay, for the work that he did. So what Abai is saying is that over here in this Mishnah, or Braisa, when it says regarding the donkey drivers that are transporting the paydas of Shemitah, it's the same thing. They transport the paydas of Shemitah, and they take a percent to eat for themselves. What this person is saying is that I'm going to eat a little bit of it, and you're going to eat a little bit of it, and together we'll have what to eat. But it's being given as a matana. It's not being given as a pay. Yeah. Okay, so now Taisus over here adds, according to this pshat of Abaye, that you could only do this if he's actually transporting paydas of Shemitah. Then, when you tell him that you'll eat a little bit and I'll eat a little bit, so then it doesn't look like that there's a pay over here. It looks more like just a gift that we're going to share together. Mashenkin, if someone's doing work, if this donkey driver is transporting something else, and then you're giving him paydas shvias to eat, so then it's hard to say that, it's just like a matana. Because then it looks like this is a pay for the work that he did. Here, if he's transporting this and he's going to eat part of it, so then it doesn't look like it's being given as a pay for the work that he did. This is a bias pshat. But Rava Omar, however, Rava says, and Rava goes back to the point that the Gemara is trying to prove before, that Rabbi Yechanan said that there's a knas that Chachamim put on the wages of these donkey drivers that are transporting the paydas shvius. Lo'ilam the kaddish b'kedushas shvius. Really what happens over here is this donkey driver, because he's doing work with the paydas of Shvius, and as I mentioned before, the Rishonim say he's transporting these fruits of Shemitah to then be sold and to use it for things that are not allowed in Shemitah. So therefore, Chachamim made a knas v'dekakashilach. The question was, how could you say that the wages that he earns from this has the kedusha of Shvius? Poyel, this is a worker, and a worker that earns wages, it does not get the kedusha of Shemitah on the wages. The answer is poyel d'loi nafesh agrei, a worker that does work with the paydas of Shemitah and does not a lot of pay for this. L'kansur rabbanon. Their Chachamim did not put a knas on this, and that was the Mishnah the Gemara quoted before. A person that's collecting a few vegetables in the field and he gets paid a small amount of money. There's no knas from the Chachamim. However, Chamarim, the Nofesh Gerayu, the donkey drivers that are transporting a lot of the produce and they get a lot of pay, over here, Konser Rabbanan Bahu, Chachamim did impose upon them this penalty. Chachamim did not want them to do this, and therefore there is a knas that now their paytis that they transported and now the wages that they got for this should also have the kedusha of Shemitah on the wages as well. Okay, this is the knas beneged to the paytis, the chamarim, the drivers of the paytis of Shemitah. And Umas Nisin, now when it comes to our Mishnah, Chumre de Yayin Nesach Shani. Over here, because of the stringency of Yayin Nesach, it's different. What is the Gemara, Rove, what is he addressing over here now? What he's saying is, in our Mishnah, it said, any wages that you got paid for working with Yayin Nesach, even transporting a barrel of wine from one place to another, a small thing. I'm not talking about drivers, donkey drivers that get big wages. We're talking anything that you earn from work with Yayin Nesach, because the Chumrah of Yayin Nesach, Chachamim put that knas that you can't have anah from these wages. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the Pshat in the Mishnah, why these wages are asr ba'anah. It's a knas midrabanan. Now the Shaila was asked regarding what it said in the Mishnah. Sachrei listam yenam. If a yid is hired to do work with wine from a guy, so Chacham were geyser that any wine of a guy, there's a concern that he may have used it for Yayin Nesach, that it should also be Aser. So in our Mishnah it said specifically Yayin Nesach, which means that it's for sure Yayin Nesach. What's the halacha though? Will the same apply regarding any Stam Yenom, that if you do work for a guy, will the wages earned also be Aser? Mahu, what's the halacha? So do I say given the Isur Chamor K'di Yayin Nesach, since the Isur of any wine of a guy is just as stringent as the Yayin Nesach of a guy, so therefore Schari Nami Aser, the wages of this work will be Aser. Or we do find a difference. Hayil v'tum asay kill. The tumah that there is, we know that by Avoda Zara there's a halacha of tumah, but the tumah that there is by stam yenam is not like the tumah of yayin nesach. By yayin nesach, there's a special gzeira of tumah, and as Rashi brings, we had it earlier in the Masechta, that the yayin nesach is also bahana, and it's also metame a tumah chamura like by a mace, a tumah of a kezayis. But Stam Yenam doesn't have that halacha of Tumah. Stam Yenam is the regular halacha of Tumah that there is by any liquids, which is a revius. So since we see that it's lenient regarding the Tumah, Av Schare Nami Kil. Maybe regarding this halacha that the wages, the knas, Chachama put on the wages, it is also a leniency, and it's not going to apply to this. Toshama, the Gemara brings a raya from an incident that happened. Ahu Gavra, the Ogar Arbe Listam Yenam. A person rented out his boat to transport the wine of a guy. So he got paid for this wheat as the pay for this rental. So he came to Rav Chisda with this wheat to ask him whether he's allowed to have enough from this payment with this wheat. Amalei, so Rav Chisda told him, Zil kalinu, go and burn this wheat, v'kavrinu, and bury it bekevri. Or the Girsa is supposed to be Bei Kivri, by the in a Beis HaKvaris. In other words, you don't bury it in the actual Kvarim, but you bury it in a Beis HaKvaris. So you see here clearly that to pay the wages of this transport of this wine, yain, stam yainam of a guy, is completely asr bahana. Okay, but now the Gemara focuses on the details of what Rav Chisda told him to do with this wheat that was asr bahana. He told him you have to burn it and you have to bury it in a Beis HaKvaris. In fact, the Gemara, why wouldn't it be enough if you would tell him, Badrinu, just scatter it out to the wind, so no one takes it, no one will have enough from it. Says the Gemara, that's not enough. It could bring others to a takala to actually have enough from it. People will gather it from the wind and use it. Okay, so Frank the Gemara, viliklinu, so wouldn't it be enough for him to then burn it, vilavderinu, and then scatter the ashes into the wind? Why does he have to bury it? Says the Gemara, that's also not enough. Dilme mezavli buhu, he could use the ashes from this wheat to fertilize the fields. So that's also not enough. Taisus here actually brings, we had this earlier in the Masechta, there's a concept called zeh v'zeh gairim, when you're using the ashes as a fertilizer, and it's growing primarily from the soil. And it also uses the power of the fertilizer. Really, we pass like Rabbi Yossi that says that this would be mutter. But Taisus says, nevertheless, l'chatchila, you shouldn't use this. So, but the Gemara still asks, "V'liklinu." Sorry, where am I over here? The Gemara asks, "V'likfirinu be'inayu." Why does he have to burn it and bury it? If he's anyways burying it, so let him just bury it in the ground, and no one will have enough from this. Miloitnan or Tanya, haven't we learned in a Mishnah or a Braise where it says that echad evet, this is regarding a person, we learned this in Masechta Sanhedrin, a person that's chayiv misa, so the stone that was used, sheniskal ba, that he was stoned with this, or ve'echad eitz, shenitla olav, or the wood that he was hung on it, ve'echad sayiv shenerek boy, or the sword that was used to kill him, ve'echad suda shenechnek boy, or the handkerchief used for strangulation, kulam nikbarim imay. It all has to be buried with him. So we see over here that these are things that you're not allowed to have anah from it. As Rashi here brings it, but the kavik tikverana, you have to bury it, not allowed to have anah from it. But what does it say? You just bury it. You don't have to burn it and then bury it. So here as well, the wheat that was asaba anah should be enough to bury it. And says the Gemara, Hassam, in that case, by the one that is chayiv misa, the kekavri b'beidina, where is it buried? It's buried in a designated place where the bezdin buries these things, the person that is killed and this that's buried there. So mochach milsa, it's clear the haruge bezdin that this is a person that was killed by the bezdin, and these are items that were used for this purpose. However, here you're going to bury these wheat anywhere in the ground. It won't be clear. If someone's going to uncover this, he's going to think to himself, Eimer, he'll say to himself, Inish Gonav, a person must have stolen this wheat, the icy and kavra, and he brought it and he buried it there. So he may come to have an from it. So therefore, Rav Chisda says, if it's asa bahana, you have to burn it and then you bury it. So kavra hacha, you would think that he buried it over here. So now the Gemara brings another incident connected to this. The Bey Rabbi Yanai, this is connected to the Shemitah that was brought up before. So by the house of Rabbi Yanai, what they did is, Yozfi, Peiris Shvius Ma'anim, they borrowed from the produce of Shemitah that poor people had. Basically, during Shemitah, poor people had a lot of produce because there's a lot of hefka fruits, and they can get a lot for themselves. Problem is, though, next year, they're not going to have all this available for them. So what do they do in the house of Rabbi Yanai? They did a favor for the poor people. And during Shemitah, they took from their excess, they borrowed from them. And then upadalu b'shminis. And then next year, in the 8th year, they pay them back with the produce of the 8th year. So now the thing is, there could be a problem with this, because as we said before, the chalipin of Shvius on Shemitah, when you sell any produce of Shemitah, the money that you earn takes on the same status as Shemitah itself. So over here, if the aniyim are getting back the pay for what that was borrowed from them with the produce now of the 8th year, so this produce that was an exchange for what was borrowed from them from the payers of Shemitah should have the status of Shemitah as well. So now the problem is that the following year, they won't be able to use it in their house, because the following year, it's already after Zman Habir. It's after the time that you have to liquidate this from your house. So how could the poor people get this payment and keep for themselves? So also, Amrulei Rabbi Yechanan. They came and told Rabbi Yechanan what they're doing in the house of Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yechanan said, it's actually not a problem. Yah is saying Avdin. They're doing a very good thing. What's the reason that they're doing a good thing? So Rashi explains the reason is because at that time, when the people by Rabbi Yanai are paying back the poor people with the payers of the 8th year, the produce of Shemitah from the 7th year is long gone. It was eaten up already. When do I say that if you're selling the produce of Shemitah and you get paid in return, that the money takes the place, has the same status of Shemitah, when you're paying for the produce of Shemitah that you're selling right now, that's right here. But over here, when they're paying them back with the produce of the 8th year, when you have to wait months later until you get the produce of the 8th year, and the produce of the 7th year of Shemitah is long gone, over here, the halacha of chalipin of Shvius, that it would take effect, the same status of Shemitah on this, does not apply. Kenegdon, and he says, and you find a corresponding or a similar thing as well, be'esnan, by the halacha of an esnan. Esnan is a person that gives a gift for a woman in exchange for having a relation with her. So this esnan, this gift, is not let it be brought as a carbon. So over there as well, in such a kind of a case, mutter. We find that that this would be mutter. He's going to prove here now from a braise that what happens by this case of esnan, if a person first had a relation with this woman, and only afterwards, when it's all over, he gives her a gift. Over here, that gift that he gives her is going to be mutter to be brought as a carbon, because at the time when he gave her the gift, the whole relation between them is already in the past. So the gift now is considered to be just a matana. The same thing we're saying here, that because the payment of the produce from the 8th year comes long after the produce of the Shemitah is gone, so this pay is not considered to be the exchange of the produce of the Shemitah. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, it says that Nosan law, if he gives her a gift v'loy ba'aleh, and he never had a relation with her. Or ba'aleh, he had a relation with her, but v'loy nasan lo, but he didn't end up giving her anything. Esnena mutter. So the gift will be allowed. Okay, so this brayso, when you read it simply, is very hard to understand. As the Gemara here asks, regarding the first example, it says nasan lo v'loy ba'aleh, that he gave her a gift and he never had a relation with her, that this gift will be mutter. Pshita, of course it's mutter. Even the loy ba'aleh, if he never had a relation with her, matana ba'almahu, it's just a gift. Why shouldn't it be mutter to be used as a carbon? Again, matana ba'almahu the yavla. It's just simply a gift that he's giving her. And Vesud, and then the question is on the second halacha of this brayse. He had a relation with her and he didn't give her the gift. So he didn't give her anything. So if he didn't give her anything, how is the brayse saying that the gift is mutter to be brought as a carbon? Ella says the Gemara, this is how you have to read the brayse, and this proves the point that Rabbi Yechanan said. Nasan law, if he gives her a gift, and only at a later time period, not right away, at a later time period he had a relation with her, which the Gemara will explain on the next daf, then it'll be mutter. Or, and this is the case that's connected to what Rabbi Yechanan is saying here, he already had a relation with her, and only nasan law, after it's all over, then he gives her the gift, esnena mutter. This gift will be mutter. So from here he proves that we say a similar thing over here regarding the paytis of Shemitah, that if you pay back from the paytis of the 8th year in the time when the paytis of Shemitah are long gone, then it's going to be allowed. That's the halacha of here. This is the way Rashi learns the Gemara. It's only if take the paytis of Shvius are take long gone already. Other Rishonim actually say that even if the paytis of Shvius are still in existence, but because it's not like a regular sale where you pay money for the paytis of Shvius that you're selling and getting the money in return right now, they're giving back the paytis of the 8th year a long time later. Even if the paytis of Shvius still exists by Olam, it doesn't matter. It will be mutter according to other Rishonim. But from Rashi, it's mashma that it's only in the case where the paytis of Shemitah are already long gone.